This is the Eglinton Jerk in a special edition of the Eglinton West Pop-Up Podcast. Welcome back. We showed you me and Desmond Cole walking through Reggae Lane on an Eglinton Avenue West. And now we get into the more explosive part of the interview. Desmond Cole.
What's up?
How you doing, bro?
All right, thank you.
How was your time on Eglinton West here, walking through Reggae Lane?
I am very much enjoying myself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving us your magnanimousness. Tell me, the most explosive thing that's happened, Black Wires, in Canada in the last week has been the revelation that Black Lives Matter Toronto has purchased an $8 million property at 24 Cecil Street, 10,000 square feet of space. They have trumped Donald Trump, a whole bunch of others who are going after a similar disposition. You had some problems with that, so let's start first of all with you tweeting out a whole bunch of things earlier, and that really clearly showed where you stand on this. Can you take us through what you felt before the quotes, in terms of when you found out that was happening, and what you thought, and then your disposition, and then finally leading to you coming public with your statements? So we're looking at where you were before, when you heard it, and then what exactly you said in your tweets.
Okay, so let's start with before and the history and the context, which for me is that, I remember when Black Lives Matter Toronto first came on the scene in 2014, late 2014, after the murder of Mike Brown that summer by police officer Darren Wilson in Ferguson, Missouri, and the revelation that Brown would not be facing any criminal charges for murdering Mike Brown. That was the genesis of Black Lives Matter Toronto. They had a big demonstration in Toronto, a solidarity demonstration for Mike Brown, where they also were lifting up the names of people like Jermaine Carby.
Because in Brampton.
Yes, because in 2014, Jermaine Carby had been murdered by the Peel police.
The one they think that they had here a knife and all that bullshit?
Yeah, the knife that appeared on the scene hours after the police had taken Jermaine's life. And so, I started following the work of Black Lives Matter Toronto and being really, I would say, inspired, impressed, motivated by what they were doing to lift up the names of people like Jermaine, and to say that just because we see what's happening in the United States, let us not focus solely on that to the exclusion of police brutality, anti-black racism, and white supremacy in Canada. And I started really trying to follow the work of this group, and over time really became a big supporter and lover of the work that they were doing.
Why didn't you become a member? I mean, you're certainly associated with them, and a lot of people would say they acknowledge your association with them, but why didn't you become an actual member and a key part of BLM at the time?
Because I wasn't an organizer, I was a journalist, and I'm still a journalist, and I'm a writer, and we all have different roles to play. First of all, nobody asked me to be a part of Black Lives Matter Toronto, so that's the biggest reason.
Big.
But I felt like what I could do was to document and to write and to think and to portray what was going on in a media environment that was extremely hostile to any black resistance, to any black solidarity movements. I was thinking, you're getting a bigger spot in mainstream media circles, and you support what this group is doing, and so you continue to play that role. Tell the truth, describe this movement in a way that the white mainstream media does not actually want to, and that it can be your service alongside of this incredible movement that is growing and springing up. So that's the reason.
And for instance, my first introduction to you, actually, in a way, physically, was when, not far from here, actually, when you were down, you had that demonstration for the brother with the hammer.
Andrew Loku.
Yes, and then y'all came up here, and then y'all occupied and disrupted the traffic and the Island Expressway.
Yeah. I mean, this is...
Tell me about that.
Well, that was Black Lives Matter Toronto, I think, really demonstrating that black people have power in this city, and that black people do not have to take actions like the murder of Andrew Loku with passivity and with asking for favors of government and begging to be seen, that we have power, and that when we organize, we can make that power seen and felt and magnify the movement. So we were marching along Eglinton West for Andrew, and somebody whispered in my ear, "We're going to take the highway." And I wrote about this in my book because I was scared. I was very, very scared that day of what could happen to us in the immediate aftermath of taking
How so?
Well, there's like dozens of police around. There's a police station right here.
Police station is right there.
You know, and I'm like, they're not going to stand for this.
Mm-hmm.
So it worried me, but as I reflected on in the book, it's like I'm seeing a group of activists, most of them younger than me, who are out here taking incredible risks, who have been lifting up Andrew's name, who organized a beautiful set of speeches and commemorations near where he used to live, just off of Eglinton.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're like, we want to take up more public space to show the world how outraged we are about the lack of accountability from the Toronto police. And I was with that. So as scared as I was, I'm like, these people are out here taking a huge risk for me and for other black people. So how can I not follow them? I'm going to go onto that highway as well. And it was a big moment. It was a big moment of us seeing
y'all
that
blocked the highway,
the
traffic,
traffic,
expressway,
the
baby.
traffic stopped, and after I would say a good hour of the traffic being paused, trying to get off of the Allen off-ramp, those cars just started reversing and turning around and going the wrong way up the highway, which for me in that moment was like a very powerful experience of feeling
How
like,
did that
man.
radicalize you in terms of, in relation to you as a journalist?
Yeah.
Because at the time, you were still writing for the Star at the time?
In 2015, I started writing around September. This would have been right around the time that I would have been starting to write for the Toronto Star.
Good. So you were...
So how it radicalized me is that it said like, yeah, you're a journalist, but a journalist is not outside of the fray. A journalist is not what these so-called objectivity proponents say is a camera lens, is a pad and a pen that doesn't have any emotions or feelings or history of their own, but who just comes and documents without further commentary. A journalist brings their own lens and their own understanding and experience and perspectives to bear, and I am a black person who feels just as vulnerable to all of this police violence as anybody else. And so as a black journalist that day, it was my job to follow my comrades onto the highway, and if that means that we all get beat down together on the highway, that's what I'm going to do today. Like, that's how it made me feel, is that like I am going to stop this objectivity nonsense, and I'm going to state very clearly, I'm not here to watch this group demonstrate. Now that they're taking this risk, I'm going to demonstrate with them no matter what happens. So it was a radicalizing.
So how though then, Desmond, right? It begs the question, didn't you become a key part of BLM then, though? Because it seems like you're not fully in.
I'm not. I've never been in.
Why?
Again, I was never invited in the first place.
But of course, hold on, that's a cop-out.
No, it's not.
That's a cop-out.
No, it's
that's
not.
An absolute cop-out.
What?
Like, what do you mean? Somebody have to invite you for you to say, I want to be a part of this?
Yeah, but I'm a part of a bigger movement for black life in the world. I don't need to be a discrete part of a single group.
We're not talking about a discrete part. We're
Okay.
talking about the key radical movement at that point. Black Lives Matter Toronto,
Yeah.
who was in its formation,
Yeah.
doing their thing.
Yeah, but I was there. That's the thing. I was like documenting. I was invited to speak at the demonstration for Andrew.
But
Like,
why didn't you become a member? Or a key member, let's say.
I can only answer you the way that I've answered you.
Please do.
Nobody
Again, if you will.
Nobody invited me to say, Desmond, you should become a member of this group, and we want you as a key member and a key part of what we're doing with this particular kind of organizing. But
didn't you think, though,
yeah,
Desmond,
yeah,
at that time that you had things to contribute
I did contribute them as a journalist
to the Black Lives Matter in more ways than a journalist, because
No.
you're talking about where you were inspired beyond journalism. So I'm asking you-
Organizers do specific things, though. Organizers do a specific role, which I believe in and which I support, but not everybody is out here having to do the same thing and do the same tasks. So I never became a member because I saw myself, like I said, using the journalistic skills that I have, that you have that to contribute, because not everybody has to be inside the thing.
Indeed.
Not everybody has to be the prominent member, figure, face of the thing. Some people can be the people who show up and document. Some people can be the people who volunteer from time to time when they are able to do so, and come and marshal for an event, or come and do the artistic component of an event and share a song, share a poem, share a reflection. I was invited to BLM events to do speeches. I did that because my work as a journalist and my research and my documentation meant that I had things to say in those kind of circumstances, which they thought were valuable. So we did work together, right? I'm not saying we didn't work together. We worked together often. And across the years, I went to a lot of their events, and if things got to a point where, for example, the police are coming, I'm going to stay there, and I'm going to, like I said, put my body on the line, because I support what they're doing, I believe in what they're doing, and I want to be a part of it in that way. But not everybody has to play the same role, and I think it's a mistake to think that there is something strange that I was not an organizing. A lot of those folks, by the way, knew each other before BLMTO in different relationships in terms of student organizing. A lot of them were doing student organizing in university. I was long out of university, so I was just playing a different role. And there are a lot of things that I believe in that I do not become a personal member part of, but I contribute my own skills or thoughts or talents or reflections in a different way, and this is one of those things.
Let's get to the chase, though.
Yeah.
When it was announced that Black Lives Matter Toronto purchased this $8 million property at 24 Cecil Street,
Yeah.
10,000 square feet of space and so on, you tweeted out some stuff. Can you take us through
Sure.
what you tweeted and why?
So I want to make a correction first of all, because one of the things that I said in my in a couple of my tweets was inaccurate, and I want.
How so?
Well, you just said it yourself. You said Black Lives Matter Toronto, excuse me, purchased the building.
Yes.
And that is not wholly accurate. It is Black Lives Matter Canada, which is a newer non-profit entity.
Because, hold on,
Yes.
from my research, there are 3 chapters in Canada. There's a Black Lives Toronto,
Yeah.
there's Black Lives Waterloo,
Yeah.
and there's Black Lives Vancouver, BC.
Yeah.
So you tell me, so this new body, Black Lives Canada,
Yes.
is made up of whom? Do you know if it includes the Waterloo chapter and the BC Vancouver chapter?
It does. But the reason that I was confused, and the reason that a lot of us are confused, is because Black Lives Matter Canada's leadership and decision-making core appears to be only former members of Black Lives Matter Toronto. So the people that we knew...
What do you mean former? in terms of they've left the organization? Because we know, for instance, which is another thing that this whole brouhaha has brought up, is that there have been a lot of people who have left Black Lives Toronto,
Yes.
with discouraging and disparaging statements on the way out against Black Lives Matter Toronto.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, as far as I understand it, the folks who are now part of Black Lives Matter Canada, and who are part of that kind of core decision-making group, are either out of Black Lives Matter Toronto as a local organizing chapter, or they're on their way out. But it's Black Lives Matter Canada that has purchased this building. The reason it's confusing is because
This is a new organization, essentially, then.
yes, it is. It's a newer organization, but its leadership are core members of the old Black Lives Matter Toronto.
Give me some
And
names. Give me some names, baby.
Sandy Hudson, Rodney DeVerlis, Cyrus Marcus Ware, Raven Wings. Those are the ones that I know about, and all members of Black Lives Matter Toronto. But now there is Black Lives Matter Canada. Okay, so
Why is that, though? I mean, is that some flimflammery, though, in terms of numerology or numerology and all of that?
It is very confusing to me, and I'm not really sure, because it seems that now there is a distinction being made that those folks aren't necessarily doing the work that BLMTO was doing before. They're onto this nonprofit thing now. And that this nonprofit thing is essentially supporting different chapters across Canada. But it becomes confusing when we see this news article, or several news articles that came out this week.
A whole bunch of them, baby.
Yeah.
Several.
And what those news articles are saying is, as you mentioned, that Black Lives Matter Canada, not Toronto, Canada, has purchased a building for just over $8 million.
A 10,000 square foot building.
That's right. And that the city is involved with giving grants to this, and that the city may be
$250,000 officially so far.
Well,
and
now,
Mike Layton,
yes,
the departed Jack Layton's son, who's a counselor, he's pushing to get them dedicated funding.
That's correct. That part is accurate, and I am not 100% sure. It seems as though the $250,000 is in discussion right now, but there are other sources.
Look, most of the media reports say it's like a
but
done deal.
But again, it sounded like a done deal.
No, it's been reported as a done deal.
Yes, but this is why, again, it's confusing, and so I want to acknowledge that when I said it was Toronto getting this money, I'm looking at all the personnel, and I'm looking at people that I saw organizing in Toronto for years. I'm looking at a building in Toronto. I'm hearing about Toronto City Council funding it, and I'm thinking, okay, this sounds like the old thing. But I want to correct that it's the entity that purchased that building seems to be Black Lives Matter Canada. Whether or not there is a real distinction between that and the old BLMTO remains to be seen.
Plus, the other thing that people are asking, not to cut you, right, but I'll cut you, stick a pin in that, is that Black Lives Matter is predicated on suspect of official bodies, meaning taking monies from cities and councils and so on.
Right.
So this acknowledgement that they've taken $250,000 from the city of Toronto,
or are seeking it.
yes,
right.
or seeking it. What did that say to you about where they're moving, or have they moved their playing field?
Okay, this is the part that remains the same for me, no matter who purchased that building. The history that we've just been talking about of BLMTO, the first Black Lives Matter kind of, let's call it official chapter in Canada, that had blessing and relationship with Black Lives Matter in the United States.
Of
Black
course,
Lives Matter Global Network.
Right? The head of the global network is married to one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter Toronto.
That's right.
Right, go ahead.
So,
And by the way, Sandra Hudson, who is key in even this announcement, is studying law in California, and I understand that she actually might be living with the Black Lives Matter global people in California. But
well,
go ahead.
There's a very close relationship going back a lot of years with organizers in Toronto and organizers in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is, the Black Lives Matter Toronto that we watched for years wasn't just deeply skeptical of making relationships with the city of Toronto. It was against doing that at all. The reason being that we are trying to point out the way that the city of Toronto's leadership is supporting the police, is perpetuating anti-black racism in the schools.
Go ahead.
And that while we are challenging those things, it's not right to say, but also give us your money. Also fund us.
Dig.
So Black Lives Matter...
I criticize you, but I just give me that money.
Right. So Black Lives Matter Toronto, so far as I know, was not into taking government money of any kind.
And they didn't before this.
Not that I know of.
I know of any situation.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I know of.
Did.
So what is strange to me is that you can be BLMTO and not do that, but then call yourselves BLM Canada, and suddenly now you have relationships, partnerships, and money changing hands with the same city government that we all watched you criticize and rail against and try to hold to account for years. That to me seems strange, and I don't trust it, and I have a lot of really big skepticisms about why things are different now. And you can say that this building that they've purchased is
24 Cecil Street in Toronto, y'all.
Is primarily for arts and culture, right? That it's not really about the same kind of radical activism that we associate with those same individuals. But to me, I don't know how you, this is a brand. Let's call it what it is, right? This is a brand now. So if you build your brand on radical activism, create a new brand off of that brand, and then say, now all the rules that we operated under before and all the ethics that we had, we don't have to abide by that anymore.
Out the window.
I have a problem with that.
Out the window.
And so that was what I tweeted.
So what did you tweet exactly?
I tweeted that,
as far as you can remember,
that there's $250,000 on the table from the city of Toronto and possibly more, that the Black Lives Matter organization and movement as I knew it in this city would not have taken that kind of money or made that kind of relationship with the city of Toronto. So I have questions about that. I also said that Yusra Kogali, so you mentioned people leaving the group and having criticisms on their way out about Black Lives Matter Toronto.
A lot of them did.
Well, 2 years ago, Yusra Kogali, who was... Sorry, I'm going to say Yusra's name properly because we used to say a lot Yusra Kogali in the media. And I've been corrected that it's Kogali. So I'm going to say it properly. So Yusra Kogali told us...
From Rwanda? Go ahead.
No, from Sudan.
Sorry, it sounds Rwanda.
Sudanese.
Yes, go ahead.
Yusra left the group. Yusra was one of the most prominent members of BLMTO from its inception. And she was taking a lot of risks, doing a lot of organizing, being upfront a lot of the work that they were doing when there was a big demonstration, for example, down at the SIU after the killing, the Special Investigations Unit after the killing of Abdurrahman Abdi. I know that Yusra, for example, was pivotal in organizing that very important and disruptive demonstration. So Yusra did a lot of things over the years. It was Yusra that people might remember calling out Kathleen Wynne at the end of Tent City, that 2-week demonstration in front of the police headquarters.
Yes, Collagen Bay. Yeah.
Right, where Kathleen Wynne was saying, "Oh yeah, I acknowledge that that racism is a thing," and Yusra was right there to say, anti-black racism. We're not just talking about racism Premier Win. We're talking about anti-black racism.
Yeah.
So in 2019, Yusra left BLMTO, and as she was leaving, she said that this group was taking a turn in a neoliberal direction that she did not agree with. Okay? That was 2 years ago.
That was very prescient, wouldn't you think?
Well, as somebody who was inside the group for years, she would know.
Yes.
Like, she, unless we don't believe her, which I do believe her, she was there, she was part of the internal organizing of the group, and this was her analysis of what was going on, and this is the reason that she gave why she left. So when I made my tweets, I also talked about Yusra kind of giving us this heads up 2 years ago, and like, does anybody not remember that Yusra was suggesting that there was a problem with the direction that this group was moving? So I said that, and I also talked in my tweets about the Black Lives Matter global network, who I have since come to confirm have definitely contributed to the $8 million to buy this building.
The question for you about that, don't stick a pin in that, but don't forget where you're going, is that my question is, when did Black Lives Canada get that money?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
Because if it happened recently, because I haven't seen anywhere in all of my research that that was ever mentioned.
I think that that is a very legitimate question to want to know. It's a question that I put out there because here's the thing about the Black Lives Matter global network.
There's been on a lot of conflict.
Well, let's talk about it.
Trying to announce what they did with the $90 million or more that they raised. And accountability. 10 chapters led by the New York chapter said to them, we haven't gotten any of the monies you said you'd be giving out to chapters.
That's right.
What the fuck's going on? And can you tell us, what did you do with that $90 million plus that you raised?
So after the murder of George Floyd last year, donations just started pouring into Black Lives Matter global network in the United States.
I'm telling you.
And that 90 million that you're citing, that's the figure that they told us, this is basically what we've fundraised in the last while. It's been years since local chapters in the United States have been saying, where is our money? Where is our support? There is this central body called Black Lives Matter Global Network, led by Patrisse Cullors, who just recently resigned.
After 3 properties that she bought, including a big-ass farm in Atlanta, and rumors are that maybe there's some properties in the Bahamas or Bermuda. But go ahead.
Well, that's not really my interest in this story. My interest with this is that $90 million...
Where did it go?
The chapters are saying, where did it go? Many of them were saying, we never got anything. We've been doing the work out here. We've been organizing in these streets. We've been sacrificing for years. And also family members of people killed by the police. The family of Mike Brown, the family of Tamir Rice. So Mike Brown Sr., Samaria Rice, and others have been saying, like, what are you doing for us while you collect on all of these donations that other people are giving to you? So I do really have and this is my really big, so I think that the issue of BLM Canada taking money from the city of Toronto is a huge conflict and a huge problem that we need to talk about. But I also think that if the families of those murdered by the police are saying, BLM, you have taken money and you have not redistributed it, you have not shared it with those who are really at the center of this movement, and the chapters are saying you haven't redistributed this money, you have not given this money to those who are doing the work on behalf of these families, how much of that money went to this one building in the city of Toronto? Because my personal thinking about that money is that it does not belong to the Black Lives Matter global network, and that it should have had a plan to properly redistribute that money across the country and to any of its chapters.
Especially to the families
Yes.
of the victims.
Yes. And so when you have those folks coming out and saying something is wrong with this picture, when you have chapters defecting and saying there's something wrong with this picture, there's something wrong and unaccountable with the way that you're managing your money, but then folks in Toronto are like, we're buying an $8 million building. We know some of the money has come from the global network. I would like to know.
The bulk of the money.
I don't know that.
Bulk,
I don't know that. I just want to know.
I've heard Rodney DeVos say it's the bulk of the monies came from BLM.
Okay, well, I would like to know how much, and I would like to know how that decision was made. It was my understanding. And when, because I don't know that answer either.
Yeah.
It was my understanding when Patrisse Cullors was still the executive director of the Global Network that she was also not only a board member at the same time as being an executive.
The only
right,
board member.
So when you're part of a nonprofit and you're the only board member and you're the executive director, and forgive me if I have my terminologies wrong, maybe they don't call it a nonprofit in the United States. However you're setting up your organization, it just seems like an unbelievable and unaccountable amount of power is being invested in one person.
Yeah.
And even when that person leaves, if they were the only decision maker that we can see and that we can have an idea is in power because of their title, how do you even have a succession plan after that? How doesn't that person have to pass along their powers to somebody else when they leave?
Desmond, it's reminiscent of the Judge McLeod's thing when he left the organization, the Federation of Black Canadians, and then he appointed who was going to succeed him.
Well,
So, Cullors, BLM Global in the USA, she appointed the people who were going to succeed her.
I think that that's weird.
Quite.
When you have chapters across the country and you have thousands and thousands and thousands of black people organizing under this banner, but there is such a tiny fraction of people, maybe even just a handful of people, or in some cases one person, making these tremendous decisions, there is something deeply, deeply messed up about that. But I also see the way that the Black Lives Matter Global Network has aligned itself with the Democratic Party in the United States after saying that it would never do such a thing. After getting other people on board with it by saying we don't organize with political parties. And that's what I see happening here in Toronto and Canada as well, is that a group of folks who originally were not interested in aligning themselves with power and seeing how they could work with them suddenly seem like they are, and I don't know what changed.
So are you saying that BLM Canada now is going to eventually align itself with the Liberal Party?
No, I'm not saying that because I don't know that that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
But what I am saying is the city of Toronto is out here using paramilitary style tactics to evict black people from parks, to chase black people off of public transit.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing changed in the city of Toronto. I was at a picnic this afternoon for Jamal Francique, who was killed in the next region over in Brampton by the Peel police. In Mississauga, Brampton area. The police's brutality in this city and in this region towards black people has not changed. So the ability now to take their money seems to me to be premature. And I'm being nice when I say premature, but it just doesn't align with it doesn't align with the previous values that group expressed. And you can tell me now, well, that was BLM Toronto, and this is BLM Canada. It's all the same people to me. I see the same folks who were part of one now being part of the other. So even if they say they're a different entity with a different mission, they are building on what we were told was a radical anti-capitalist and anti-state activism to say, well, now partnerships with the state and business and money relationships with the state are actually fine because we've redefined what it is that we're doing. That's not so easy for me. I don't think that that's the way that things should be. And I think that if BLM wants to go in a different direction where they are more of an artistic, cultural, curatorial kind of group, that they can do that if they want to. But to hear them talking about like revenue streams that they're going to get from this new building, $8 million, like people have been talking to me being like, why $8 million for that and not something else? But when only a small group of people get to make the decisions about something like that and the rest of the black community feels iced out, you're going to have this kind of questioning and uproar and anger. It's only natural. And yeah, I count myself as part of that because I don't think that that's the best use of that money. But what do I know, right? I'm not on the inside. I've never been on the inside. But to me, on the outside, it doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. And so I know I'm not alone in that perspective.
Is BLM Canada now, this new entity, you expect to be way more corporate and compliant with the state?
I don't know about corporate and compliant. What I know is that it seems like that entity is a different thing from what started off as BLM Toronto. It has a different mission seemingly, but it only exists because it started off as that radical, political, activist, disruptive force. That's the only reason now that people continue to support and to give their money and to invest in that thing.
And essentially then, are they just cashing in, as it were?
I don't know if they're personally cashing in, but
come on, if you get $8 million,
yeah,
and if you got $250,000 from the city,
yeah,
that sounds like.
But $8 million is going into a building, like it's going into a property, and people are like, so is this a real estate play? Like, what is that? People say it's important to have spaces. That black people need spaces. I agree with that. There's a difference between having a space to organize and having an $8 million, 10,000 square foot mansion. I'm just saying, like, I think that there's a distinction to be made there. And again, I'm not alone. So if black people question that purchase and say, was this really the best way to spend the money? Because I think that there is still an ethos and there's still a communication to black people that this is for y'all. That this is for the benefit of our broader community.
Of course.
And if that's the case, then I think I am well within my right to say I don't think that was the best use of the resources.
So where are they going in your estimation?
We're going to have to ask them.
No, but you're a critic, you're a journalist.
Yeah.
You've studied them.
Yeah.
You know the information. Where are they more likely to go now, given this new dispensation and this new shift? You agree there's a shift?
I do agree there's a big shift happening, but here's what I would say about that. When you are embarrassing Mayor John Tory by going into his city hall near his office, holding up signs next to him and reminding him that he is not keeping his promises about the things that he owes to black people, he's probably not going to want to fund your operation. Okay?
But he has, or they have, the government of Toronto has.
But that's the signal to me about what's changing.
They've done it with other black organizations, long-standing organizations like the Jamaican Canadian Association, Tropicana, the Black Business Professional Association, and so on, haven't been able to get that kind of money as easily.
Well, maybe you know those histories better than I do. What I know is this. Those other organizations that you just named have never, ever been as disruptive to this city administration.
No, absolutely not. They've been very compliant and, standing in line.
And they started as nonprofits. Tropicana started as a community nonprofit organization. JCA, these are long-standing groups that have applied for government funding, that have had that relationship. BLM, not so much. This is new for them. This is much newer. So what I would say is,
how did they get that money when the JCA, Tropicana, and so on couldn't?
Well, but again, if a lot of the money is from the Black Lives Matter Global Network, like these other organizations...
No, I'm talking specifically the $250,000 that they got from the city.
Or may get, because I have to confirm exactly what part of the process that's in. But I don't know, I just think that there is a role, if you're a service provider, for example, to try and get government money in order to provide services to the community. But radical black activism and government funding don't seem to go together. I saw Bev Bain tweeting about this the other day as well, that there is a kind of pacifying of activism that goes on when you start to shift into that role. So I wouldn't expect the Black Lives Matter Canada entity itself to be as radical and as disruptive and as aggressive as what started out as BLMTO, given this new relationship with government. I would not expect them to be...
They'll be more compliant, you think?
I think that is a fair thing to anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happens, then, you know, maybe there are going to be other groups that step in. Here's the other thing I want to be really clear about too, you know, and this is important. I don't expect that the membership, the original membership of Black Lives Matter Toronto, have to spend the next 30 years out here fighting in the street and putting their life on the line. I want to be really clear about that. They don't owe any of us anything in that regard.
They did tremendous work.
They have done tremendous work, and I will always be grateful for that work. But what I don't want to see is that on the strength of that work, things now move to a much more, as you said, compliant and corporate kind of positioning on the strength of a movement that was really doing something that was much more disruptive and, in my opinion, politically was much more valuable to the black community as a whole. Because you know what? You can have a 10,000 foot space in Toronto. I question how that helps black people across the country who do not have direct access to that space in downtown Toronto, how it's going to really benefit them. And that's a lot of money to drop into one city.
Of course.
And to say that that's somehow going to positively affect everybody else. Maybe there were better ways to spend that money.
Because, of course, there are two other major chapters of BLM in this country.
There are more than
Water
two.
Two.
There are more than two.
Waterloo and BC. Who else?
There's well, let's like
my knowledge is Waterloo and Vancouver, BC, and Toronto. There more
on the listed on the BLM Canada website is to the Toronto chapter, but also Montreal, Vancouver, Edmonton, and Waterloo.
Wow. Okay.
So, under this, BLM Canada also lists Black Lives Matter Global Network, right? So, how resources are being distributed across all of those? Are they all getting the same amount of money? Can we expect to see multi-million-dollar properties popping up in
over
all
the place?
I would imagine not. I would imagine not, because
Montreal, Waterloo,
because the headquarters
Vancouver.
of BLM Canada are going to be in this building in Toronto, right? So I would imagine that there wouldn't necessarily seemingly be a need for all of that, but I question whether there was a need for one of such spaces of $8 million in the first place. And again, I just wonder more broadly, if we step back in our movements, is this progress? Is it progress to graduate from doing the radical activism to whatever this new thing is going to be? Is this a sign that the movement is growing up and that black people are moving forward? I think it might be a sign that the individuals involved in this project are moving forward for themselves. I don't immediately see the bigger help and support to the general community, which is why I put those tweets out. But, you know, we have to continue having that conversation, and we have to get some answers to the questions that I and other people are asking. People hate this. You mentioned Justice McLeod. When I was critical of his Federation of Black Canadians gambit, people said, why don't you criticize BLMTO? That's what they said. I have had questions for BLMTO even before now. So
Of
when
course.
you
You had that uncomfortable question when you were on your show at CFRB a few years ago.
because I asked them about Yusra Kogali leaving, and it was an uncomfortable moment.
They didn't expect it?
No, I didn't tell them I was going to ask them that question. And no,
Come on, how
no,
could you not?
No, they didn't expect it. But, you know, I want to try and live by a set of values, which force me to interrogate these kinds of acts, no matter where they're happening and no matter who is doing them. And I want to be clear about something else too. It's different for me with Black Lives Matter because they have done things in this city and in this country that I truly, truly believe in, that I think have that have contributed to a larger emancipatory, liberatory project for Black people.
Big.
And I can't say that about a group like the Federation of Black Canadians. I really can't. So
Chalk and cheese.
So I think that those are two very different cases that actually shouldn't really be compared to one another. But nevertheless, people who say on Monday, we don't fuck with the government, and then by Friday have found a reason to do so, I'm always going to have a question about that. People who don't want to talk about a member leaving their group and saying this is going in a neoliberal direction, but 2 years later are buying an $8 million building under a different organizational name, but it's the same folks. I do have questions about that, and it's not because I don't like you. It's not because it's a personal thing. It's not because I have a vendetta. I'm a question asker. You're a question asker.
Absolutely.
We have to ask these, how do we get better as a community if every time that we have questions, we suppress them because it's going to make the Black community look bad, it's going to expose us in the eyes of white people. We're asking white people for their money now.
Big.
So
we're getting it, and we're cool with it.
Well, I'm not. And a time ago, the same people who are now taking that money were not cool with it either. So I just want to know what changed.
Are you just a killjoy?
Yes.
Because again,
yes.
Desmond Cole, this is Dubsport Lodge, Clifton Joseph, the Eglinton Jerk, here with Desmond Cole on the block here, on the bench at Eglinton and Marley. And I'm asking you, Desmond Cole, a lot of people might see you as a killjoy because, for instance, a lot of people, with this news of this 10,000 square foot mansion down at 24 Cecil Street that BLM Canada has purchased, see it as a great, great historic move.
Right.
So you having any criticism of that is seen as a killjoy. Why are you such a killjoy, guy?
Yeah, that's true.
And what do you have to say to those folks who will herald this as a historic moment?
Well, again, I don't want it to be so lonely out here. I'm not the only person with these criticisms. I just choose to voice them because I think that that's how I responsibly use my voice and my platform. But the joy of being able to move money in this way, maybe for me that's not what Black joy means. Maybe that's not what joy in general is about. I found a tremendous amount of joy being being a witness to the incredible work that I have seen the people that I'm talking about to you, that I've seen them do over the years. That brought me a lot of joy. Dancing on that highway on the Allen Expressway there while those poor
that was sweet.
People had to turn their cars in the other direction. And we did that for Andrew. That brought me joy. Okay? So I don't want to see that kind of energy then forget about, for example, like I said, these families in the United States under whose name so many of us have been fighting to be forgotten because we want to have a nice mansion that we can have meetings in. That's not joy for me. People will disagree with me, Clifton.
Absolutely.
And they're allowed to disagree with me, but that's not me being a killjoy.
They do and will.
They will and they do. That's not me being a killjoy. That's me trying to have a fruitful discussion with other black people who I believe we're all on this journey on, to say, how do we do this better? How do we do this best? If that makes me a killjoy, like, I am following a long tradition of killjoys, and I'm not afraid and I am not ashamed, but like, you know, they say only God can judge me.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel. If you really want to know how I feel, that's how I feel. Nobody is going to tell me while I am here doing what I need to do for the limited time that I am here. Nobody is going to tell me that my interrogating and question asking and thinking and analyzing and challenging, which has, I think, for all of my critics at some point been something that they appreciated. No one's going to tell me that I am taking away their joy by being me. I only get to be me for a very short time while I'm here, and maybe this is my joy. I don't know, but it's at least my responsibility if it's not my joy, because I don't take a lot of pleasure in having to be criticized or in having to be told that you're tearing down the community by asking all of your questions. I don't take a lot of pleasure in that at all. I don't take any pleasure in it. It sucks. But I can't stop doing that, because you know who else has benefited so much from all of this? Me.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Because in documenting this movement and in releasing a book and then having this murder of George Floyd become this international phenomenon that got people talking more about the Black liberatory struggle, people bought my book.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I'm benefiting from that too. So I don't want to sit back and say that, you know what, because now people think that my work is relevant, because people want to buy my work, that I'm going to go have my joy over here now, and I'm going to leave this fighting and this arguing and these difficult conversations and thinking through things to somebody else while I go and have my fun. I'm not saying anybody else is doing that. I'm just talking about me right now. That's not what I want to do. I want to stay up in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I feel comfortable. That's where I feel like I'm doing something valuable. And I want to stay up in there. So people could call me whatever they want. Only God can judge me, Clifton.
Killjoy, baby. Killjoy.
You know what? Let me wear it.
Yeah.
Let me wear it, because I know why I'm doing what I'm doing out here, and I'm coming from a tradition, and I'm learning from other people. I'm talking with other people. I'm talking with you. It's hard.
Absolutely. What of this situation and the Judge McCloyd situation that you see parallel and that you have responded in similar ways?
Well, like I said, these are two incredibly different situations.
Explain, if you will, please.
The Federation of Black Canadians went behind closed doors with politicians and had its whole agenda laid out before the public ever knew that it existed. Black Lives Matter started in a street protest with thousands of other people. Those are not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Black Lives Matter Toronto organizers, let's talk about some of the things that they accomplished.
Dig.
When the coroner in Ontario said that he was going to have a coroner's inquest into the death of Andrew Lockwood, to the murder, I don't like to say death, that's their word. They murdered Andrew. Andrew Doyle, the police officer. I know his name. We know his name now because of that inquest. When the coroner said, I'm calling an inquest, he named Black Lives Matter and said that their activism was part of the reason why he was calling that inquest. That is the thing that they did that a group like FBC could never boast to have ever done. They got changes in education. They were pivotal in removing the police officers from the Toronto District School Board. They had that demonstration at the SIU that I talked about, which nobody had ever thought to do for I don't know how long, that we've been allowing the SIU to get away with their part in upholding this police state. And Black Lives Matter Toronto said, no, we have to go there and we have to disrupt them. Black Lives Matter Toronto have done so many different things. Freedom School, to help bring up a new generation of children who, from the time that they're young, get the education that a lot of us did not get at home or in the school system that we grew up in. There's a lot of things that Black Lives Matter's record for all time into the future, we can say they did that. That is not the same as a sitting judge getting together behind closed doors with his friends and crafting a political agenda that is suitable to the government, and then saying, well, if I didn't invite you there, it's because I didn't want to mess up my money. Like, that's what he said. That's what Justice McLeod said about the formation of FBC.
Say that again, if you will. What?
That, Ron Fanfare has that in an article. It's quoted in my book. He said, if you weren't invited to the kind of creation of FBC, it's not because I didn't like you. It's because I, as a judge, have to make sure that I know who's around me in the room and I can't mess up my money. That's him saying that. That's not me saying that.
That sounds so pimpish.
You said
Bitch,
that.
you better get my money.
You said that, not me. But I had a big problem with that, and that's not the same origin, it's not the same political mission, it's not the same political ideology as how BLMTO was working out here. I didn't even mention the historic intervention to stop the Pride Parade in 2016, 5 years ago now.
That was very at Bay and College, was it?
Young and College.
Young and College. That was outstanding.
Of course. I could go on for the next hour about all of the things that BLMTO has done and did over the years that I appreciate and that I admire and that have inspired me and have influenced my own thinking, my own career, my own actions. That's why I'm disappointed in what BLM Canada has become and in the direction that it is going. It is not the same thing as looking at a group that never started out that way, but is trying to put on the garments of revolution and radicalism. And by the way, the Justin Trudeaus of the world wouldn't even give people like Donald McLeod any attention had it not been for radicals like BLMTO being in the street.
Absolutely.
Let's get that shit clear on this record as well.
And however, though, Desmond Cole, they both, Black Lives Matter Canada, Toronto, and Judge McLeod ended up at the same trough, the government funding bodies trough, right?
It appears so. It appears that in the case of one, well, let's actually be clear. Justice McLeod also said, and you and I have talked about this before, Justice McLeod said that the late Howard McCurdy advised him, don't take money from...
NDP stalwart out of Windsor, Ontario, one of the first blacks in the federal parliament.
Yeah, Justice McLeod said that Howard McCurdy told him, don't take money from the government if you're in a black organization, because then they'll co-opt you. A lot of people have said this over the generations and over the decades.
Of course.
This is not a new idea.
It's a bit of a truism in a way.
Well, but this is why when people want to come for me personally and say that there's something wrong with Desmond, he has an attitude problem, he hates black people, he hates himself as a black person. Like, do you not read? Have you not read any books of our ancestors saying these kind of things, of the great thinkers of the black past that we honor? We don't just honor them because they were the first this or the first that. They had a mind. They had thoughts. They had a political tradition that they were trying to follow.
Indeed.
Some of them were socialists. Some of them were Marxists, anarchists. Like, these are not just black people in a suit and tie who looked good and made all of us feel nice. So, yeah, like, I don't like these kinds of criticisms that I receive for doing this kind of stuff. But, we have heard for a long time the corrosive effect of taking the government's money while trying to hold them to account, and how difficult, or if not impossible, that is to do. I would be being irresponsible if I felt like that, doing the work that I do and didn't say anything about it. So I'm here saying something about it. And I'm not apologizing and being like, I have to give the correct amount of love and respect for people and work that I have always loved and respected. And I also have to give the appropriate criticism and skepticism when that's what I feel.
Mr. Cole, we're in the era where, for instance, a lot of money is being thrown out at black communities across the country. Federal government, the big banks, all kinds of stuff, right? Schulich School is giving $1 million to the Black North Initiative. all kinds of things are going on right now. Where does this stand in your conception of what we have to look out for in terms of all of this money's being thrown? And a lot of times there's no accountability. There's no sense of people saying, okay, we got X amount of money and this is how we dispense with it.
Right.
What does it say about where we're going, and what's your cautionary tale for black folks with all this money being thrown around, black-wise?
Money is not going to liberate us, period. Like, the government, no matter how much money it gives to individual black organizations, no matter how much it encourages banks to loan us money at interest and essentially get ourselves into debt, because, like, I find it very interesting, all of this new money, for example, for black entrepreneurship, which comes in the form of bank loans. Black people don't need debt. That's not actually our liberation. It's the opposite of that, right? For those of us who can even access it in the first place. But no matter how much money they give to those initiatives, Clifton, the places that the government is always spending the most money on black people, the prison, the jail, the immigration detention center, the police, the child welfare system, it's not a money thing. It's about taking the boot off of our neck, literally and metaphorically. It's about an abolitionist framework that says, actually, we don't need police. Because if the police create social problems in our community and then you give us crumbs to solve what the police created, we'll never get ahead. If the prison creates so much lasting intergenerational trauma in our communities, but you give us a little bit of a fund to help a few people in the prison to, I don't know, more easily access health care when their health is being destroyed at large by the prison system anyway? This is what people aren't getting, and they're telling us that this is incrementalism, essentially, that what we're seeing with these dispensation of government money is that we're slowly getting to a place where we're going to make it, where we're going to have the things that we need as black people. No. The same Trudeau government that wants to give these money out is also increasing its deportation targets. So now the Trudeau government, a couple of years ago, I put this in my book, said we need to increase our deportation targets by 25 to 35% in this country. We need to pick up the pace, said Ralph Goodale, on deportations. So when you break our families apart, but then you create a non-profit organization to help us phone them in another country, have we won? Have we moved any further ahead? Or are we getting pacified? Because everything is brand new these days. Everything is a historic first. Everything is a historic... It would be a historic first if we stop the problems at the source. Capitalism, white supremacy, I mean, they're synonymous. But like this colonial, capitalist, white supremacist hellhole that forces us to need all of these programs, that forces us to need all of these interventions. When are we going to deal with that? I'm not saying it could happen tomorrow. It's a generational, long-term struggle. But I've decided that that's the kind of struggle that I want to be a part of, rather than pretending that a few bucks here and there from the government is what is actually getting us further ahead. I don't believe that, and I never will. Not anymore, because we grew up being taught to believe in this system, and my liberal ass has had to untrain my mind from all of the beliefs that Canada was going to love me one day, that Canada was going to recognize my blackness one day. I had to grow out of that and to challenge that and to say that that's actually not reality. It's not like I have the answer that's going to get us free tomorrow. I don't. I just know that these little crumbs that are being thrown down at us are a distraction, so that the people throwing the crumb don't have to reckon with the fact that they are up there throwing it and we are down here receiving it, and that they have no right to be up there, and that we should be dragging them the fuck down here with us.
You've mentioned the book a number of times, but I'd ask you now to go through The Skin I'm In, that book, which was also
The Skin We're In.
The Skin We're In, also directed by Charles Officer. It was also
The documentary,
a
yes.
documentary. How was that whole process of you deciding, for instance, of collating and coalescing what you've done over a number of years into that book? It started with that article in Toronto Life magazine, award-winning article, and then you decided to make it that. Can you go through just how you did that, why you did that, and why strategically, in your mind, that it was a move to make?
It's so weird the way it happened. Like, it wasn't part of my plan because I got back from Ferguson. So I talked about how...
After Mike Brown?
Yeah. I went to Ferguson for a week after they announced that they were not going to be charging that killer cop, Darren Wilson, with anything.
You went there on your own, or you were covering for somebody?
I went there... physically, I went there alone, but I was sent by Walrus magazine to write articles about what I was seeing and experiencing there. I did that. I did a whole bunch of Canadian media while I was down there, like TV interviews and stuff, because there were not a lot of journalists, Canadian journalists, who had taken that trip.
I can imagine. I can't imagine why.
So you know, I went down there and I came back, and Toronto Life said to me, you know, they got in touch and they said, we've been interested in featuring a piece about like Black life in the Greater Toronto Area. We've been seeing your work and we think that this would be a good piece for you. Are you interested? And I was very interested right away. Like, this is like the biggest opportunity that anyone had ever,
I'm telling you,
offered.
I'm telling you, why not, baby?
So I was very excited about that. And at the beginning, actually, that piece was not about me. It was about other Black people and things that were happening in the city around that time that I thought were really interesting. And I put it together. You know, I was kind of not really experienced with this kind of writing, and magazine writing is really different from like writing news articles, right?
Yeah.
And my editor looked at my draft and was like, this isn't exactly what we were looking for, but you told some really interesting stories about yourself and about your own personal experience in this draft. Why don't you expand on those? That became The Skin I'm In for Toronto Life.
Wow.
And so
about how you were stopped how many times by the cops?
I was stopped or followed in my car while I was living in Kingston or even around here. To my count, I sat down with my editor and I tried to do a count, and I'm like, I got to 50, and I was like, I want to stop. Like 50 is like
leave it there.
Leave it there.
Leave it there.
And now let me say something just on a side note about that, because a lot of people, including the late Christy Blatchford, may she rest in hell.
All right. Yeah.
They wanted to say like, oh, this isn't true. He exaggerated. Like, talk to people in Ferguson. There are people in Ferguson who would be stopped multiple times every day during that siege, and who couldn't go anywhere. This idea that me being stopped over the course of my adult life 50 times is like unheard of or unbelievable. Talk to people who grew up in Jungle, or who grew up in Regent Park, or who grew up in Rexdale, or in Malvern.
They'd be at 150 and saying, you know, I'm stopping at 150.
Like, it's not, like, people tried to make it like this is like outlandish. This couldn't have happened. He made it up, right? But yeah.
And the fact checkers must have been on your ass too, right?
They called my friends that I got stopped with. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have a magazine call your friends?
Hey, 1978, no, 1999. Were you stopped at Dundas and so and so?
This is what they did. That's their job. But you know what, Clifton? the other thing that people don't know.
That's so full of shit. That's so ridiculous.
Well,
That's so...
but the other thing that a lot of people don't know, even though I've written about it a little bit and talked about it some, I don't put it in the front window of all my work. But I didn't have a place to live for the better part of 2 years when I first came to the city of Toronto. And
So
that's
you were couch surfing?
I was more than couch surfing. I was living in Toronto's shelter system and sometimes sleeping outside.
Damn, baby. Wow.
When I was,
Sugar.
22, 23 years old.
Mercy me, brother Percy.
But listen, when you're living that lifestyle, it becomes very apparent to anybody who knows anything about that why you would be stopped that many times by the police. Because when your home is a shelter and you get kicked out at 9 o'clock in the morning and you're just forced without a job to wander the streets of Toronto,
Big.
you are like, you're chum for these cops who
Oh,
are fucking
man.
sharking around the neighborhood, right?
Big.
So that is a big part of the reason why, especially when I moved to Toronto, I was followed and targeted so many times because I didn't have anywhere to hide from these people.
Big.
Okay?
Nowhere
Anyway.
to shelter, nowhere to hide.
I don't want to get completely off track of your question. That was the skin I'm in for Toronto life.
Mm-hmm.
Then the book publishers came and said, this is a good piece. Have you ever thought about writing a book? And I hadn't. Because literally that story, that first article was not even supposed to be about like me.
Big.
So,
You were pushing a direction, and now here comes the more people
But-
pushing in another direction.
but
Same
also like, it's like for the first time in my life, I'm like, maybe I can survive as a journalist. Maybe I can actually make something of a living because I was working at cafes while I was writing my journalism. Like I was doing all kind of odd jobs and just like part-time jobs while trying to support a journalism life. You know what I got paid for that Toronto that Toronto Life piece that won the
let me
awards?
see, about 1,000?
I got paid $5,000 for that piece. But Clifton, it took me months to write it, and for me, I was like $5,000 for one. I was like, damn, like this is amazing,
Yeah.
right? But like, how much is $5,000 going to take you in a city like this when you have to pay rent?
Plus, how much time it took you, and how many them editors were on your ass.
Of course.
saying, give me this. Can you rewrite this? Can you rewrite that? Can you do some
Of course,
shit?
you
Can
have
put
to
this in
you
there?
have to do the work. So when you break down the amount of hours that you put into that 5,000, you realize
You're
quickly.
making about 2 cents an hour.
Well, and so when the book offers came, I was overjoyed. And I negotiated with Doubleday Books to get a deal. And that was when I started working on the skin we're in. And in between the creation of the book and its publication, that was when we partnered with Charles Officer.
How did that come up? Because I love that brother. I love his visual style. I love his storytelling style.
Charles is brilliant.
So how the fuck did you hook up with that motherfucker?
I knew a little bit about his work, and I was really nervous about being part of a documentary because, I wasn't going to be, I'm not a director, I'm not a film person at all, but I was going to be consulting on the work in the documentary about my own work. So I was like, this is really going to take the eye of somebody who I can trust. And after what little I knew about Charles and his work,
What did you know about Charles at that point, though?
I knew
Did you
that...
see Nurse Fighter Boy?
Yeah.
I love that film.
And
What else? What else? And what did you know of the brother?
that might have been the only actually film of his that I had seen. But I also knew that people in the industry were like, this guy is talented. This guy is doing amazing stuff.
is.
This guy has an eye.
I'm telling you.
And so I told my agent, I really want to work with this guy. I told my partners at 90th Parallel Productions, who got the rights to the documentary, could we try and get Charles Officer? They were like, he's really busy. He's doing a lot of things right now. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's cool. I just want to see if he'll make himself available to do this, because I would feel comfortable working with him. And luckily,
Wow.
he said he was interested. We met each other. I met Charles and I was like, yeah, I want to work with you, And Charles went into CBC, and people don't know this, he fought to make sure that they would put this on. And he had to fight. Because as usual in Canadian media, the white media are like, oh, we don't know if our audiences are going to appreciate this kind of work, by which they mean white audiences, actually, and usually older white audiences.
Absolutely. 55 plus.
But Charles fought for it. And I'm glad he fought for it, because he made a beautiful, beautiful film that I was really proud to be a part of. And our producer, Jake Yanowski, was amazing. Made sure that we connected with the right people, made sure that we connected with Andrew Loku's sister Rose in Saskatoon, that we connected with an immigrant family in Red Deer, Alberta, where I was born, right? Where my parents...
You were born in Red Deer?
I was born in Red Deer.
Wow,
that's why we went there.
Excuse me, Mr. Canadian.
Yeah, I know. That we went to Halifax, and I connected with Ella Jones for the first time. And was become
beautiful sister, wonderful.
Oh, that's my sister, right?
But like Halifax, yeah.
Among other things.
Yeah.
But and then the book came, and so.
But before the book,
yeah.
Tell me some more about your experiences with the documentary.
Okay.
Like for instance, what did you learn? What was your involvement in it, and what did you learn from the process as a journalist?
Yeah. So my involvement, other than being the main subject of the documentary, was that I consulted on it. So I worked.
What does consultation mean in that time?
It means that I worked with Charles and with Jake, the producer, to kind of say, here are some of the stories that I think we can try to tell in this documentary. I don't tell Charles how to film it.
Yeah, no.
I don't tell anybody how to edit it.
You'd be over your line, baby.
I sure would.
You'd be over your fucking line.
I don't know about those things.
I'm telling you, you know what I mean? So
but,
hold your corner, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay in your lane.
I did feel like I could contribute to the storytelling aspect and the shaping of the narrative aspect. So I would talk a lot with Jake and with Charles. Who do we want to meet when we go to this place or that place? Who do we want to talk to? What kind of things do we want to address? And you know, it was really interesting, actually. There's so many things that never made that documentary that we filmed.
Shit on the floor, on the cutting floor.
Oh my God.
Isn't that amazing?
Hours and hours and hours.
I'm telling you.
So when we touched down in Ferguson, where we went, so this was me going back now to Ferguson about 3 years after I had first been there, 2 years. And, you know what I remember actually? It was right before the Trump-Clinton election.
Woo!
So I'm down in Ferguson, and I'm talking to people out there, and I'm asking black people, like, what do you think about this election? And it's like almost everybody gave me the same answer.
Which is what?
I really wish I had another choice. Because I hate both of these choices. I don't know what to do. I know what I'm probably going to do, but I'm not happy about it. I wish that there were better options in this election, right? But I learned as a journalist that, I guess this is something that I knew, but you kind of learn a lot of the same lessons over again. That putting yourself in situations and just observing and asking questions and relying on people who are doing the work wherever you happen to be always leads you to interesting stuff. Always.
Indeed.
Right? So I definitely, because while we were in Ferguson, we went to St. Louis and we saw this like massive climate protest that was happening, and we weren't even supposed to be there for that. One of the things that I tell you is on the cutting floor, as you say, that we never even put in was the first night we were there, we went to the demonstration of a young man who had been assaulted by the police in another St. Louis county. And he and just like a handful of people decided to stage a demonstration outside of the police station there. And we're standing on the side of the road and people have signs, and people are driving by in their cars screaming "White Lives Matter" at us and just saying really nasty shit. And then the cops at the building we're demonstrating at are on the roof.
With guns and shit?
Well, they always have guns, but
Yeah.
they're filming us as well. And I learned about myself that, like, I have to learn how to govern my instincts sometimes to always want to go and get something, like get the story, or not even get the story, but like...
Yeah, because sometimes as journalists, right, you're working and you will do anything to get that shot.
Well, here's the thing. When they were pointing their cameras at us, we're getting sworn at by people on the street. People are throwing shit at you. It got to a point where I was like, no, fuck this. Let's go and point the camera at these guys on the roof. Let's go. So we started walking toward the building, and they saw us, and they went inside their building. And then I said, Charles, let's go inside.
Woo.
And we just went all together as a group, and we went inside the police station with our cameras in this St. Louis County police station. This is a massive, massive, like, I'm going to call it a compound. It wasn't even a police station. It was like a giant space. And we just started asking them, why are you filming us? What are you doing about this man outside who was beaten up by your police officers? Why are you so interested in us? Why aren't you doing anything for this man? By the way, what happens to the videotape that you filmed? Is that your property? Is it the property of the state? Like, why are you filming us? And after a few minutes of this, the sergeant on duty came in and told us, like, we have to get out of there, we have to leave, you know? But that was probably a more dangerous situation than I appreciated at the time. And I might not do that again, particularly not in the United States of America.
You must have had PTSD after that when you got back to Toronto.
But this whole experience of fighting back against the police and fighting back against white supremacy itself is a collective trauma that we're all trying to work through, right? Like, it's not just me personally, it's like knowing what they can do to all of us, which is like the crazy, scary, traumatic part, right? Knowing that, like, I'm touched down from another country here, but they just see another nigger. That's all they're looking at.
Yeah.
So I also really I learned that, again, something that I think I had a good sense of before, but you learn in another way, that there is a commonality to what black people across Canada will tell you that they're experiencing. Because after we went to Ferguson, we went to Saskatoon, Red Deer, and Halifax. And although the regional and specific experiences of people are different, there are so many things that ring similar within that black experience, within a black immigrant experience, because a lot of the conversations I had were about black immigration experience on top of just being black in Canada. And it made me feel good because I thought, when we release this, hopefully this is something that a wide swath of Canadian black public can relate to. That even if nobody else appreciates this, we're going to appreciate this because we are living these experiences all the time. We went to an African food store in Red Deer. We found one while we were there. And I got the water crackers, the dry cracker.
Yep.
Jamaicans
love to use that with their fish and shit.
Listen, this is a staple in my house growing up, okay? And we're not Jamaican. I'm from Sierra Leone. My family's Sierra Leonean, but we know those water crackers anyway.
Yes.
And you're going to find those anywhere that you can get them. And there's a shot that was not included of me coming out of the store in Red Deer with my water crackers, being like, "Yeah, motherfucker, like I found it.
I got it.
You know?
I got it."
So that was a very, very beautiful and powerful experience with Charles.
Desmond,
And
what do you got going on now?
You still got tape in this thing? Like, are we still rolling here?
I'm telling you, I got tape for days.
Wow.
I got 11 hours on this.
Okay.
motherfucker.
What am I doing now? You say?
Yeah. So okay, two things.
Yeah, and then maybe we should stop and, like, my throat is getting parched.
Absolutely. you will get your throat parched. But we'll end with this right now. Is that what are you doing now?
Yeah.
And about Yes Everything, your new website and reportage situation, and what do black folks have to be very aware of and be even scared of in terms of all this money being thrown out there, and what is the responsibility of black organizations to get that money? If you want me to repeat that, I will. But
Okay, well, let's start with what I'm doing now. Honestly, I'm just trying to enjoy my summer a little bit.
exactly, me too, baby.
I don't have any major stuff on the go right now other than trying to start writing more for Yes Everything, and to try to put out some more reporting and stories about.
Talk about Yes Everything and why that came about and what you expect
Now
to
you're
accomplish
piling
with
another
that.
question on top of another question. I see. But briefly,
Yes.
Yes Everything is.
Please be brief.
I will be brief. I'll try. That's not my strong suit, if you haven't noticed.
Neither me. I say, why say it in 10 words when you can use 110?
That's always been my problem.
Go ahead. I love you, baby. I love you.
Love you too, Clifton. Yes Everything just started because the pittance that you get paid to do freelance work in this country, freelance writing, is not worth it.
You can get a cover story for $150 in some cases, right?
Yeah.
Depending on who you deal with.
Like I said, when Toronto Life was like, we're going to pay you $5,000 for this, I was like, man, I hit the jackpot.
I'm telling
and then
you.
I worked for months in order to produce it.
Dig. You jump for joy earlier, and afterwards you're just like, damn, what
Yeah.
the fuck?
Yeah. So, what the problem is with freelancing in this country is people want you to have a word limit that is unreasonable. And then, when you deliver your draft, your almost always white editor wants to tell you that you didn't say it right? And they want to edit the shit out of your work. They want to take out the uses of the term white supremacy. They want to say that you should give the other side of this or that thing.
After a while, you want to say to them, why the fuck don't you just write it then?
They want you to write it for them.
Dig.
That's what they want.
Dig.
They want you to take all the heat from writing it,
Yeah.
but then they want to brag about how they put diversity into
Fuck
their
you,
publication.
You editors. Fuck you editors.
Say it. Say it again.
Fuck you editors.
So I decided that I don't want to do that anymore, and that it is actually more valuable to me to not make money, but to put out the things that I think I can't get published anywhere else and say them in the way that I want to say them. And, L. Jones, as I mentioned, is somebody who, for a long time, I've been working with and trusting and building with. And so we've been talking about this thing for a really long time. And that was the purpose of creating it, is just to do, for example, these in-depth pieces that we did about the Black North Initiative, which we've been researching for a year. And nobody's going to pay me to research nothing for a year in this country.
Hell no.
So, but I did that on my own time. Elle did that on her own time, and we came together. And Elle is just a brilliant researcher and thinker and writer. And we put that together and we published it, and still getting a lot of really great feedback about that series.
I'm telling you, you basically, in some ways, basically exposed them.
Well, I mean, there's a lot going on there that people need to be wondering and asking questions about, but it is proportional to the amount of play and celebration that they're getting across this country, particularly from white folks.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting how the white business community, just like our white governments, are now going to lead all the rest of us to progress and change when they're the problem.
Yeah.
So
they're the problem, and then they present themselves as the solution.
Exactly.
Wow.
So Yes Everything is a place to be able to write about stuff like that. So right now, that's like the big thing that I have going on, and it's like, it's a free publication. There's no paywall. There's no ads on it. We're not making
So it's yeseverything.com?
yeseverything.ca.
.ca. Cool. Oh,
And-
you're real Canadian.
Yeah, we gotta be.
I'm telling you.
Because
Go ahead.
yeseverything.com was already taken.
Oh, okay. You have to go to yeseverything.tv.
Right? So, I'm working on that. And then your other question was about what to worry about or watch out for in terms of all of this money flying around. So, since I'm such a killjoy, let me try and do something different on the end here.
Kill some joy.
No, I'm going to do something. I'm going to
kill joy.
I'm going to do something different on the end.
Oh, okay.
Because maybe people are used to me doing that.
That's so unexpected.
Well,
go ahead.
I contain multitudes, Clifton.
Absolutely. You're diverse, baby. You're like diversalist.
What I would say is, as far as all of that goes, we have to remember as black people that our worth can never be valued by these governments and these corporations, and that our liberation can't be secured by them or through them, and that we are here like living through our history. We're on stolen indigenous territory. Like, we're not on the places that we've been indigenous to for millennia, or in some cases like way longer even than that. We're living out an experience here that is the result of colonialism, and we have to figure out a path forward. And for me, it doesn't mean that there's some easy solution tomorrow through a partnership with a bank or an oil company or a federal government, for that matter, or any government. That, like, we have to be in it for the long haul. But, like, as true as that is, and as real as that is, like, we have to be who we are. We have to celebrate that resistance, that spirit of resistance that actually got us all here in the first place. And so, you know, that might not feel like a thing that everybody can always hold on to, this uncertain future we always got to fight. But I just want to keep fighting. The joy for me is in the fight itself. It's not in what's going to happen in the end. It's in being able to struggle at all. Run out of battery?
This is the Eglinton Jerk, reporting for the Eglinton West Pop-Up Podcast. Our guest tonight was the electrifying Desmond Cole, dealing with the electrifying and explosive issues of the day, especially with Black Lives Matter Canada, now a new entity purchasing a 10,000 square foot mansion at 24 Cecil Street in downtown Toronto, and the implications. Please like, share, subscribe. This is the Eglinton Jerk, reporting for the Eglinton West Pop-Up Podcast.